All right, guys. So because we have a guest speaker, we are going to get started at exactly 9 because Liz is a busy lady and I don't want to take too much of her time. I'm so happy she's on here, you guys. I don't know if you guys were at the super weekend that we did here and heard her talk then, or if you were at leadership and you heard her maybe speak then, but every time you speak, and I think we even went down to Boston at that little event where you were super pregnant.
Yes, very like busting at the seams.
Yeah. And you spoke then. But basically, every time I hear Liz speak, she talks right into like my heart, into my soul. And I'm like, oh, this is, why we do this. This is why we want to do this. This is the vision behind this. This is like what there is for us. And I think that you just emulate such amazing leadership in not only your team, but the network. And I'm like just so grateful that they can hear from you. You guys, she's a superstar diamond in the business. And I think that you've just created something that's so sustainable that everybody can really, really just learn from you. So I'm going to let you kind of take it away. And if you guys have questions, you can throw them in the chat, or maybe we can do like a little Q&A afterwards. But without further ado, I'll just let you take it away. And you
cool.
Okay.
Thanks, sister. Yeah, I love just coordinating with stuff with Joan. Like I've got to do that event in Maine, and she's just like a ball of fun, and we've got to experience summits and leadership together over the years. And I'm excited to be here because really she just kind of asked me to share a little bit more about my story and casting the vision for your business. And I've been doing this about 8 years now. You have to forgive me, my throat's on the way out, my voice. I've been doing this for about 8 years now, and no matter how many different things I've tried, how many different strategies I've implemented, how many times I've, tried to keep up with the Joneses on social media or whatever it might be, everything, all my success and everything that I want to happen in this business is rooted in two things. Well, really three things. Vision, like you have to be able to know where you're going to get there. And you have to be crystal clear on it and super committed to it. Leadership, you have to be able to become the version of you that's capable of achieving the success you want to achieve in your life. And that's categorically true. Like it doesn't matter what area of your life you're thinking of, whether it's your marriage, as a parent, in your community, whatever, you have to step into that next level of leadership if you want to experience the glory that comes with it. And the final piece is just like, are you willing to put your money where your mouth is? Are you willing to show up for what you say you want? And I think some people are really good at the vision part. They're like dreamers beyond measure. They're super good at casting the vision. They can make a vision board that would make anybody swoon. They can come up with all the ideas, but they aren't willing to make the sacrifices and do the work and stay consistent in kind of like what I consider, or I call this idea of like building in the dark. Like it's like the literal dark, like when, your kids are asleep and you're up way late working because that's when you could find the moments to get the work in, or in the darkness of like just being alone in this process when no one's celebrating you or giving you an award for showing up in those moments, or just the dark of the ups and downs of business. But, people can cast that vision, but they're not willing to show up in the dark. They're not willing to show up in those moments that they're not getting celebrated or experiencing a win for every single thing they do. Or we have the hard workers. We have the people who can absorb the knowledge and they like fight. They work, but they have no freaking clue where they're going. They're not alive in the work that they're doing. They're not inspired by the work they're doing. And they're just working, they're grinding, they're hustling. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what the game plan is to get there. They just think that time plus hard work is eventually going to equal their vision. And that's just bad math. It's just not true. So when you can find a way to make those two live in harmony, or three, like hard work plus leadership is going to equal achieving your vision, then you have that trifecta. You have the ability to get to where you want to go. So when I was growing up, I grew up in New Hampshire, not too far from lovely Maine. I miss New England dearly. We're out in Wisconsin now, but I grew up in New Hampshire. I was there most of my life, and I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My mom, my dad, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, everybody in my family ran their own businesses. So I kind of took it for granted growing up. I didn't think much of it. But in retrospect, there were things that I really appreciated as a kid. The fact that My parents never missed a ball game, or they were always on like the sidelines cheering me and my siblings on, or my mom was always around to make dinner and my dad was always around to eat it. And it was just like, we were just present, and I didn't think much of it because that's just when you grow up with it, that's what you know. But I did have the comparison of other families whose parents had to go off to work, or, sometimes they would be at our house after school because their parents would have to be at their jobs. And I just loved that like our home was the place. But when I was really little, I do have like pretty vivid memories. They're kind of, I think some of my first memories of, I don't know how old I was, maybe 3 or 4, getting up in the middle of the night or midnight or so to get up and use the bathroom or go get a drink of water. And our house was small, and walking down the hall and seeing the dining room light on at really late hours of night, like midnight, 1 a.m., and kind of peeking in and trying not to be seen, and seeing my mom like with the light dimmed, hoping she wouldn't wake us, and her briefcase open and all of her papers kind of strewn about the table, working. Because she ran her own business, she had time flexibility. She had the ability to be there at our games, to be there at the dinner table, to be there to put us to bed, but she had to pay the price for it because in order to be earning, she had to be working. So thankfully, I had a mother who was willing to make those sacrifices and was willing to do whatever it took to be there with us. But it meant that in order to put food on the table the next day, she had to be up getting her work done, no matter what time, working in the dark, right? And man, did I take that for granted. I had no idea the sacrifices she was making for us. And my mom is in her mid 60s and she is still doing the grind. Like we will be going home next week, traveling out east for 2 weeks for Thanksgiving and the following week. And I'll take those 2 weeks totally off. And my mom will not miss a second with us. I mean, that woman will not sacrifice. Like, you think she made the sacrifices for me? I'm chopped liver compared to my children. She will do anything to be around my kids. She would like do her work at 3 a.m. for my kids. So I know she's going to be super present with us, but I know she's going to pay the price because she has time flexibility. She doesn't have time freedom. And then I met Beachbody, right? This business platform, like this business model that drops into my lap where you have to bust your butt for a few years to build something that doesn't just give you time flexibility, which you have in the early stages, right? If you leave your job and you're running Beachbody, but to build time freedom where I can be present with my babies without having to then pay the price later that night. Or I can take those 2 weeks off and be present with my parents and my brother and my cousins and aunts and uncles and everything over these next few weeks without having to feel like, how am I ever going to make up for this lost time? Like I'm going to be paying for this for a long time. And that doesn't happen right away in Beachbody. But it does happen if you're willing to do what's required of you to get there. And that includes the work in the business and the work on yourself to evolve into the version of you that's capable of achieving that level of success. The person I was when I started Beachbody was not capable of doing the things that I do now or be like stepping into the level of success or growth that I have now. I had to evolve into her. And I think sometimes the thing that we all want, and I want that fast forward button too sometimes where I can just like, I have the vision, like I know what I want in this business and I want to be picked up and transported and like kind of plopped down into that vision. Like if you told me, hey, Liz, I can give you like everything that you want and more, like, do you want me to just pick you up and drop you in? I now have the wisdom to know, hell no. Because I know that if that happened, I wouldn't have the staying power because I wouldn't be the person that I would need to be to both achieve and sustain that. It's like a pregnancy. Like there is a gestation period for a reason, right? That baby's got to cook for several months. And God forbid that baby's born premature, which happens. Sometimes they face complications and it's a lot harder in the beginning. Sometimes if they're born too early, so sad, they can't survive that because they didn't have that time to grow and evolve, right? And it's like that as far as viability in this business. Like people want to like sprint to like a rank, but they don't want to evolve into a leader as they're doing it. And then they hit diamond and they lose it. How often do we see those kind of things happen? You see it outside of Beachbody. People win the lottery and somehow, I have no freaking clue how, blow $400 million. It's like they weren't the person that was capable of being handed that level of success or money or status. So everything falls apart. You don't want it to fall apart. You want to build this thing for the long haul. And that's going to come from making sure that you're nurturing who you're becoming in this process as much as you're like fueling that fire of the actual business itself. So if I were to ask you guys, and feel free to use the chat, do you know like where you're going with this thing? Like, what is the vision? If you can capture it in like a couple words. And if the word is no, I have no freaking clue, that's okay too. You know, self-awareness is a massive part of leadership, and a willingness and a vulnerability, humility, whatever you want to call it, to say, you know what, I've got to focus on this area. But if you're confident in it and you know that vision, call your shot. Okay. Joan, total freedom, financially, time, family. I feel that. That's an amazing gift. And the vision doesn't have to, like, it's so different for everybody, you know, like it doesn't have to be, yeah, what she said. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. Like your vision could be simple. It could just be something that like tugs at your heartstrings. By the lack of responses, I'm gathering that some people might need to rework their vision or think about it. Leave full-time job, home with your baby. That's awesome. Yeah, see, being able to pick my kids up from school. It sounds simple, but it's a big deal. Be creative and help others without having to worry about money. Drop everything if needed. That's one of the best parts of that time freedom. No credit card bills, Christmas in Hawaii. I love it. Okay, so holding true to that vision is so important. And I remember, and I told this story at leadership, so sorry if you guys have already heard it, but it's just such an important one. When I was hosting I host leadership retreats for my coaches every year. I love doing it. And I was hosting one of my leadership retreats, and I always try to make them like a really big deal, because these coaches, they bust their butt to earn this event, and they work so hard to get there, and they rank advance, and they put everything into it, and they cast their vision, and then they do back it up with hard work. So I picked this beautiful spot on Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, and we had 20 something, I think it was like 26 girls that year that had earned this event. And I invited Kim Carver to come, and it was the third year in a row Kim was coming to this event, and he has just this way of connecting with people in general, but especially coaches, and like just pulling this greatness out of them. And I just love watching Kim at work, because he knows how to pull the potential out of people. And I had taken some time to set up these time slots for all the girls where they could earn a spot if they had hit like a certain goal or certain metric leading up to this event, and they could earn some time to have a one-on-one with Kim to go over their goals and their vision and their business plan. And at one point there was kind of a lull in the action, and I'm running around the house kind of making sure everybody's happy and trying to be a hostess with the mostess. And Kim comes over and he's like, hey, do you want to have a one-on-one ourselves? And at this point, Kim had come to multiple of our retreats. He'd become like an integral part of our family even. He's close friends with me and my husband, and just a remarkable guy, and been an amazing mentor to me. So I was just looking forward to some time catching up. And I sat across the table from Kim, and we start chatting, and I can just tell that something's off. Like, he is one of the most positive, happy, upbeat guys I've ever met. And we're kind of making small talk. And that was kind of my first clue, like, okay, something's weird, because Kim and I don't make small talk. Like within 5 minutes, we're talking about like the deepest stuff ever typically. And I'm like, Kim, what's going on? Like, you're like squirming in your seat. Like, you're talking to me about the weather. Like, what's going on? And he's like, can I just be like totally forthright with you and be honest? And it seemed like he was like busting at the seams. I'm like, yeah, Kim, what's up? Just like shoot me straight. And he's like, okay. And he just comes right out with it. He says, Liz, you are drastically underperforming your potential. It's like, oh, okay. I thought you were going to like pat me on the back for running such a good event, or you were like so proud of me and that's why you were afraid to tell me. And nope, he comes right out and says, Liz, you are drastically underperforming your potential. And that was kind of a moment for me that I knew in my heart I had been begging for someone to tell me that, like to hold me accountable to what was possible, to hold up the mirror for me, to show me that I had been falling short of what I'm capable of. I'd gotten complacent. You know, I rode that wave. I had all these leaders fight so hard to get there, but I wasn't willing to continue to push for my vision because my income was great and I was doing well in the business. But Kim knew there was something more in me and he knew I was capable of more. And I think that was exactly what I needed to hear. And I had put so much focus on the stuff, the metrics, the day-to-day, the granular of the business that I had lost sight of that long-term vision. I was like looking down in the weeds of what I needed to do, but I forgot where I was going. And that's why having a clarity of vision is so critical in this business, is knowing what you're capable of and where you want to go with this and what that means to you and why you're willing to do anything to get there, including sitting at the dining room table at 1 a.m. when your kids are asleep, because that's what this business looks like in the beginning. And that's why so few people ever find those next levels of success in it, because most people don't want to do that. They want the people are more apt to stay in the discomfort of the familiar than the discomfort of the unknown, even if the discomfort of the unknown is the path to get them to their dream. You can say, hey, you're at a divergent moment, right? There's a fork in the road. This path is going to be more of the same shit. So just keep doing what you're doing. It's going to be real average, real status quo. But you know what? You're familiar with that status quo. You're familiar with what it feels like to not be able to buckle your pants and how much it drives you crazy. You're familiar with the bills piling up and the stress of those bills piling up. You're familiar with, your kids, not getting that time with your kids. And that's comfortable for you. But this path over here, this path is requiring you to cast a vision for your life and to do this even when people are hating on you for it, and to be willing to put yourself out there and invite people to do this with you, even though it's going to mean a lot of no's and rejection, and to work into the late hours of the night and get up in the early hours of the morning and to do your workout when you don't want to. And this is going to get you to this beautiful place, but it's going to take a long time and you're going to be exhausted. But once you get there, it's going to be so fruitful and it's going to be everything you ever wanted. We still choose this path over here because it's comfortable, because we know it. We know this misery. We don't know this glory, right? And it's when I tell you, like, I flash back a lot and I remind my coaches a lot and give my coaches shit a lot, jokingly, sort of the early stages of the business when I started coaching. I, like so many people, started as a customer. I needed to lose weight, had 60 pounds to lose, blah, blah, blah. Shakeology, P90X, 60 pounds later, I fell in love, right? And then I learned about this coaching opportunity. And I saw my coach, Keith Callahan. I didn't know him from a hole in the wall. I just literally picked up a brochure at a yoga studio that had some dude's name literally ghetto scribbled on the back of it. I was like, all right, I'll call him. I ordered Shakeology, old school marketing. I think he still like markets that way. And so I didn't know him, but I started following him on social media and I see him like out hiking in the middle of a random weekday. And I'm like, what does this dude do that he's like, it's like a Tuesday and it's 1 p.m. and he's out on a hike with his wife and his daughter. So I message him and I'm like, hey, what do you do? He's like, I'm a Beachbody coach. I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, what else do you do? He's like, I'm a Beachbody coach. That's the only thing I do. I was like, all right, fine. What does your wife do? And he's like, no, I'm a Beachbody coach. My wife doesn't work. She's home with the kids. Like, are you ready for me to finally tell you about it? And that was all the evidence I needed that this was insanely possible for me because I saw someone else do it. I think sometimes like people get so caught up in needing to feel like everything's laid out perfectly for them when the evidence is right under your freaking nose. I'm right here telling you, like, I'm a real human. You can poke me if you're in front of me. Like, I promise I'm real and I've done it, which is, guess what? All the evidence that you need that it's possible for you, despite your circumstances, despite the crappy cards you've been dealt, despite the fact that you're overcoming trauma from your childhood that tells you that you're not good enough, despite the divorce you're going through, despite, you know, how you had to like go through so much in your, like, despite all of it, despite the schedule you have. I have 3 kids, 5 and under. I get it. Life is like a tornado. All the evidence that you need is it's possible is seeing one other person's done it. You have Joan as a leader on your organization. There you go. There's your evidence. And when I first got started with coaching, I decided right away, like once I was all in, I was all in. I'm a very black and white person. So like when I was like, okay, I went from don't even talk to me about your stupid like pyramid scheme to like, okay, tell me how I can do what you did. And once I decided that, I was in. I was working full time. I had super limited time to put into the business, but I told Keith, like, teach me how to be efficient and I'll do whatever you tell me. I'll be coachable. I won't push back. Just like tell me what I have to do. And I started kind of plugging away. And one of the early decisions I made, I casted this vision. And in that vision, I was going to lead a big organization. And I was going to help people become the best version of themselves, not just in their health, but like I wanted them to overcome their crap so that they could become a leader and they could believe in their potential. And that Beachbody was just going to be one piece of that puzzle. There was so much more to it. So I started doing that. So I created my own team page before I really had a team. I forced some of my discount coaches to be in there because I'm like, I need bodies in here. I need people to talk to. And I decided that I was going to start hosting my own team call. So every Thursday night, it was pre-Zoom days, I had a conference call line. So people had to dial into this conference call line, and I could log into this back portal on this conference call system, and I could see the phone numbers pop up when people would hop on the call. So I could tell if people were hopping on. Well, guess what? For like almost a year, I would get on that call and I was the only phone number showing up. Once in a while, one other phone number would show up, and it was my husband from the other room. And I made a commitment because this is what I'm talking about. It's about who you are becoming. So I had a choice to make. When I got on that very first call and I wanted to cry my eyes out because I was so nervous that I'd written out literally like 9 pages single spaced of every word I was going to read on this call, pretending like I was going off the cuff. And I was the only one on there. I wanted to say F it so bad. I wanted to be like, I am not cut out for this. No one showed up for this. Like, why would I ever even keep trying? And I had to make a decision in that moment and focus on that vision. Now, that vision isn't just going to happen by me hanging up the phone and be like, I'll try again next week. Hopefully someone will show. It's going to come from me staying committed to what I said I was going to do, which was host a damn team call on a Thursday night, even if I was the only one on there. Because guess what happens when you show up when no one's looking? You become better. So I knew that at least I'm going to suck when nobody's watching. So every Thursday I would show up on that call. Nobody would show up with me. I would do the full hour call and I gave everything I had. More often than not, I would cry myself to sleep because I was so devastated that nobody was on there. But I knew that if I kept working at it and I became a better speaker and I could at least honor the culture that I knew I wanted to have in that team when it existed someday, which was a team of people who showed up no matter what. Showed up when they weren't being celebrated or given a trophy, showed up because they had a vision that was stronger than what was happening in that moment. The same way that we have to send those invitations, and half of the time or more than half the time, it's going to be a no. If we don't send it because we anticipate it being a no, we're never going to evolve. We're never going to become the version of ourselves that shows up and does it even when we don't like that direct outcome in that moment. You have to keep your eyes up enough to stay focused on a vision that's going to pull you through the garbage, pull you through the weeds, and make you into the person that you're called to be. So in that time, I remember randomly, sometimes someone would throw me a bone. A discount coach would hop on a call and be nice enough and feel badly enough to stay on the call. And I was terrible, like absolutely terrible. I read from the script every single time because I was too nervous to do it on my own. And I don't know, it wasn't like one particular moment that everything clicked. I think some people like to hear a story and think that like, oh, just do this. And then all of a sudden everything fell into place and I started to have all these coaches on my calls. That's how much it was like this gradual, slow thing. Like I don't even remember when it happened because it wasn't a moment. It was like the culmination of 1,000 moments, right? Turning into something a little bit greater. Like if you were to look at it on a chart, you'd almost hardly see the growth. But what happens in Beachbody and why it turns into time freedom over time flexibility is that slow growth starts at, there is a point where it does start to hockey stick if you do this right. And the way you do this right is not just staying committed to your vision, it's teaching your people how to cast a vision. So when you bring it, and it all starts with a challenger, when you bring in a challenger, your number one job is to get them to paint a picture in their head of how they want to transform. Maybe it's physically, mentally, emotionally, in their health. And when they transform and they cast that vision and they believe that it's possible and you help them believe it's possible and they walk through that transformation, then the next step is to get them to cast a vision beyond just their body and their health. And it's like, hey, you're literally a walking billboard for this thing. Have you ever considered coaching? And then helping them cast a vision for coaching and letting that vision evolve. That's what we do on repeat. And that's how you build an organization of people who are deeply rooted in what this is, because it was established the same way that it was established for me. Shakeology, I don't know if you remember these days, Joan. Joan, how long have you been a coach? Like around the same as me-ish? Yeah, okay, so close enough. Probably was still happening at the time, where it said on the back of the bag of Shakeology, mix or stir with 8 ounces of liquid. Do you know?
I think that was disgusting.
Do you know what Shakeology tastes like when you use a spoon in a cup and you mix it with 8 ounces of water? It is absolutely repulsive. I hated every sip that I took, but I had a vision so strong that I would even drink mud to get to that vision. So that's how it started for me. Like I didn't care what it tasted like. It was a means to an end. It was going to get me there. And now we have amazing tasting Shakeology where it doesn't tell us to stir it with a spoon. And programs that aren't 90 minutes of torturous workout to get results. So it's a lot lower barrier of entry for our challengers. But if you help them cast that vision, and we just do that on repeat. A lot of people think success in this business is from the volume of people that we bring in, not the volume that you build in your organization. It is from one-on-one relationships that you nurture and develop, help them cast the vision starting as a challenger, and then cast the vision in the business and help them grow their business. That is how you build depth. That is how you grow an outstanding business. And I can tell you from personal experience, like when I started this thing, we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment in South Boston, like right on the border of the hood. We kind of didn't belong there, but it was like, you know what? We were making it. And I would sit with my busted up laptop that I brought with me from college. It was like I was trying to keep this thing alive after college. I'd sit on my couch into the wee hours of the night because my husband was working for Liberty Mutual and he was studying for the actuarial exams, which means you're basically studying all the time. So he would study till about 1 a.m. and I would work until about 1 a.m. We'd crash, get up real early, do this torturous 90-minute workout, and then get back to it. And that was the thing on repeat. But I had a vision. We had taken this trip and we went to California back before California went crazy. And we stayed on this gorgeous farm. And it was just an Airbnb. And I'd never stayed on a farm before. I didn't know, I'm like, certainly not a farmer. And this place was gorgeous. It was just like rolling hills and these animals, and like you're waking up with the sun. It was just such a peaceful life. And my husband and I looked at each other like, do you want to like live on a farm someday? I'm like, that's crazy. But we couldn't get out of our heads for a few years. It was just this like overwhelming peace. When we thought of that place, we'd look at the pictures of it. We'd think of how we'd get to raise our kids and all the space they'd get to have. And it was just a simpler way of life. And that's what we were craving. Well, 8 years later today, we live here on this farm property out here in Wisconsin, with the rolling hills in the background and the chickens and the puppy and the 3 little kids and the really simple but crazy life with these babies. And it was exactly that vision that pulled me through all those phone calls that nobody showed up for and the late nights on that busted laptop. And that's what it's going to be for you too. It's got to be that first step. It's going to be that first thing you can sink your teeth into and paint that picture for in your life. And then you got to teach it to your people on repeat, not in high numbers, not, you don't need to be recruiting a ton of people. There's a misconception in Beachbody that like the coaches that sign the most people are the most successful. And that really depends on how you define success. We've built a 7-figure business. I work about 2 to 4 hours a week, and it's our dream. This is what we wanted. And it's the time freedom that we have that we would have never had we not stayed true to this vision, even back when it made 0 sense to stay true to it. Even back when our families told us we were absolutely tapped for doing it. And they were actually right. Back then, they were 100% right. There was no reason we should have stayed the course, because there was a period in time where I was putting in 9, 10, 11, 14, 15, 16-hour days. And that week I'd make $100. And then the next week I'd owe Beachbody money because I'd have like 2 returns. And then the week after that, it would be up to 500 and I'd have hope again. And then the following week it would be back down to like $50. And it was like that for years. My parents thought I was nuts. They're like, we saved our whole lives to put you through college so that you could sling shakes on the internet and not be able to pay your bills. Like, you've got to be joking me. Like, no, this is it, Mom. I'm going to make it big. And they thought you're crazy, and they were totally right. But you have to be able to sustain through the crazy. There is that crazy period, and then there is something amazing on the other side if you are willing to do what's required of you to get there. So I hope that just kind of like gives you permission to keep showing up for this crazy dream, and to have a dream crazy enough, and to have the evidence you need that it's possible for you. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have. But I do want to remind you guys that no matter what your situation is, like what your upline says, like what you have access to, what you don't, whatever, like this is your business. And until you take full ownership of the fact that this is your business, you chose to open the doors to a business. And until you treat it like a business, it will not reward you like a business. And that lack of self-awareness, or that disillusion in like thinking, if I just, some coaches like sell it, like they're like, oh, you just like do a little bit of work here and there, and then eventually it'll turn into this amazing thing. You're going to be trapped in this horrible disappointment for all of time, and you will ultimately resent this, and it won't become anything for you. So treat it how you want it to treat you. You want it to reward you. Be willing to do what's required, and most importantly, become the version of you that's capable of achieving it. Show up when no one's looking, like all the things that you might not do now. Pay attention to that. Like, even in your workout, are you the one that no one's watching, right? Like, Autumn's not actually in your living room. I don't know if you knew that, but she can't see you. So she's not watching. She wouldn't know if you skip those last 2 reps. Are you the one that skips the last 2 reps? Or are you the one that does 2 extra reps? Like, that's who you have to become. There's a next level for you. Like, no one knows that you added an extra yellow container into your plan today, or you had that wine this evening. Like, no one knows. No one's keeping track of you. No one's your mama in this process. But you want next level results, you got to do the next level things. You got to become the person who holds yourself accountable and takes ownership. And there are a lot of parallels between our programs and our business, a lot of parallels. And the things that like the ownership and the accountability and the resilience and the willingness to sacrifice and grow into a leader in the workouts and our nutrition plan will reflect what you do in the business. And my husband has written across our mirror in our basement gym, how you do anything is how you do everything. And it's true. It's true, because it's all about who you're becoming, and you can't like pick and choose there. You're either a leader who does this or you're not a leader who does this. So I'm open for conversation or questions if anyone has them.
So good. So good. I'm taking Gabrielle Bernstein's Spirit Junkie Masterclass right now. And a couple of the things that you just said, I'm like, oh, it resonates so much. But just like the showing up, even when nobody else is even coming and nobody else is there, like those are the things that you're doing that are telling the universe, like, I am ready for this, right? Like, I am ready for this. I'm preparing for this. I am the leader that deserves this. You're getting your shit out of the way, your blocks out of the way, and attracting, your people to you. And then I love when you said that you wanted like a big organization, that was part of it. And you wanted to help them like overcome their shit and like believe in themselves and like all of that stuff. And, just the other day she was talking just like that abundance mindset about how people come to you, like love is a magnet, right? So if if part of what you're doing is loving on people and helping people, like you will be served to those people. But sometimes we just get so sidetracked with I need that's what we start attracting, right? Like I need more money, I need more coaches, I need this. And
Right.
then so you're just creating, I need more coaches, I need more of this. And so I think that like you just said those two things so beautifully without even realizing that that's what you were doing. Like that's what you were doing. And so I would love to know what your favorite personal development book is and like what you're reading currently or what you're listening to currently.
You guys would laugh. I'm not going to tell you what I'm reading currently because I'm reading a bunch of political books and I'm not going there on this call.
Okay, don't worry.
So I won't, I'll spare you guys the like literal old man books that I'm reading right now. But I will tell you this, I am a huge advocate for personal development. So I've more been listening to my personal development lately. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and I'll share a few that aren't politically driven with you guys. And I do geek out on a lot of health podcasts because we help people in the health sphere. So it is important that you are well-versed outside. Not like you don't have to become a health junkie, but like really understanding your body and its potential is a powerful tool and motivator in this particular business. But I am someone that when I'm lacking inspiration or I'm struggling or I feel like I'm in a rut, which certainly happens, I don't get my kind of infusion of motivation from a book. Now, everybody's really different in this. If you do, have your stack of books ready to rock. I get it from pulling out a blank whiteboard and getting inspired from within. Like, what's my vision? What do I want more than anything? Like when I feel like a dumpster fire and I want to like elevate myself and feel good and feel energized by where I'm going, that's where I have my dry erase markers and music playing and a quiet space away from the kids where I can just envision things like I want a big organization. I want a team of leaders. I map it out really specifically, like what I'm excited to create. Guys, the business activity tracker is awesome, but if that's having a pulse in this business. That's not building an incredible business. That's literally like survival. If you want to build an organization that is going to be life-changing for you and a business that's life-changing for you, you're a business owner, like innovate outside of those things. What excites you? What would you be pumped up to create? What training would you want to make for your team? What would you want to speak on? Whose team calls would you want to show up for? Like so many different things like that. So I go to the whiteboard, I think about those things that would excite me and that I want to be a part of or want to design or create or whatever. As far as books, a big thing is utilizing development for where you need it. So I am a strong believer in feel-good personal development, things to help teach you and help you grow and whatever. But as evidenced by the shelves behind me, like you need to understand business too. So I love reading marketing books, sales books, We are business owners. So if that's, I hear too many women especially be like, oh, I'm just not like a business person, or I just don't know sales or whatever. It's like, okay, well, you need to, because you're running a business that requires you to sell things, or it requires you to market yourself or to build a brand. But the most important growth and personal development I do is in the category of leadership. One of the most powerful books that I've ever read, and I read it on repeat, and it's actually a workbook. So I love it because it's interactive and it's requiring me to apply what I'm learning and to really think critically versus just reading and absorbing, which we do a lot. It's the John Maxwell book called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership Workbook. You do not need to read the actual book to be able to do the workbook. I do it as a kind of a book club with my leaders a couple times a year. I've had to buy multiple copies because mine have been so torn and tattered because I've used them so much over the last like 7 years or so. So that book I would strongly recommend. As far as podcasts go, let me just tell you, because I have a bunch that I love. And Ed Milet is a good one for kind of like just good interviews talking about growth and different things like that. But some that I love Brendon Burchard's podcast. They're very digestible. He does speak about leadership and stuff. I also, if you're struggling with like some mindset stuff, there's the Life Coach School with Brooke Castillo. She has some good stuff. And then if you want to tap into like branding and business, you can check out like Amy Porterfield if you want to kind of learn different marketing strategies, or shameless plug for my own podcast of Scaling Up. And I've always listened to and loved the Leadership podcast. That's an excellent one, and it's through the Dave Ramsey Company. So it's really like where you need focus. And I like to have podcasts and books that fit the different areas of my life. I'm very much like an ADD jump around skimmer. So 1 second I'm listening to like, a book about something in the political space, and then I'm jumping over to like how I can optimize my gut health for brain optimization, and then I'm studying marketing, and then I'm like going into leadership. So I listen to it or I read it based on what I know that I'm needing in that moment.
Do you guys have any questions? You can either just unmute yourself or like drop them in the chat. While we wait for somebody to do that, I will just say, at the end of the call, you said, if you want this business to work for you and do what you want it to do, then you need to treat your business like a business. So what does treat your business like a business look like?
If I were to take your phone out or if you're a pen to paper girl, your calendar, book, whatever, if I don't see the evidence of that business being built right there in your calendar and your phone, you're not treating it like a business. So I should see a minimum, like if your goal is recruiting and bringing people in, I should see a minimum of 2 to 3 prospecting calls a week on your calendar, bare bones. I should see a way that you're planning on recruiting. So whether it's you have a sneak peek scheduled, or you have a webinar you're doing, or you have a business opportunity call that you're doing, I should see the national wake up call for growth in the business. And I should see this team call on there. And I should see where you're hosting a call for your people, and when you're running a training, and when you plan on sending your invites, like that all should be in your calendar and honored on your schedule. And that to me is the greatest indicator as to whether someone's running this as a business or a hobby. If you're winging it and you're saying like, oh, I have 2 hours to work today, I'll just kind of like power through this business activity tracker when I find some time, that's a hobby, and that's fine, but just know that it'll reward you like a hobby. But even if you have limited, I'm not saying your whole 9 to 5 has to be dedicated to Beachbody. If you only have 8 to 9 to give to Beachbody each day, what is that time being used for? How are you strategically optimizing that time?
Love it. You also said like you don't need huge Success Club numbers in this business. What are your average Success Club numbers from beginning to now to create the business that you've created?
I set a goal for 8 years of Success Club 10. So I never missed a month in Success Club 10. And now Success Club doesn't really affect my income at all because of where my business is at. My business is built very much on volume and what my downline is doing. So that's where my energy is. So I do recommend Success Club 10 as the goal when you're in the building phase, because it's just evidence that you're bringing in fresh blood. And that's really what you should be doing. It's not a lot of people. And if you're constantly keeping your pipeline full and doing what you should be doing throughout the month, it shouldn't be like too difficult. And if it is, it means you got to switch stuff up. Like, don't keep beating your head against the same wall if it's like something's not clicking. But we know other people are hitting Success Club 10, so that means it's possible. So it just might mean you need to do it differently if you're struggling with that. Now at this point, my business has shifted tremendously, because once you get to a certain point, and it depends what your goals are. My goals are not elite. My goals are not top 10, because those don't serve me financially. My goals are very much financially driven. I care about the volume that I'm bringing in, and that equates to income. So I'm paying attention to where I'm placing people, how I'm nurturing my downline, how I'm like really raising up other leaders in my organization. And Success Club is not really a stressor so much anymore for me, because it genuinely doesn't affect my business one iota. When you're, capping at the higher ranks, Success Club moves the needle like a couple bucks, and it's not. So in the beginning, it's very important. And then it can still be very important depending on if you've built a business on a wire frame and you don't have the strength of your organization working with you, then you could be 8 years in still needing to like bust your butt and hit Success Club in order to make a decent paycheck. But the nice thing is, when you do it right and you build that depth, you really don't. So that's nice, because there can be this evolution of growth in your business to where you don't need to stay in hustle mode forever to be able to benefit financially.
Love it. And we'll finish up with this last question. Shannon said, what are your tips for casting a vision for your team?
You know what I can do? Joan, I can pass along. I have a worksheet it's just called the Future Forecast Formula, and it walks you through a process to kind of extract that vision if you're struggling with it.
Yeah.
So I will send that to you this week in our chat online. Yeah. But really there are a lot of different ways to do it. It's how you get inspired. I know some people are really visual, so you have to like be aware of how you are sensory wise. So like if you're super visual, then do a vision board. I think that's a really powerful way to be able to kind of see what you want to focus on, and like have it extract emotion in you and inspire you to keep pushing. I don't so much do a vision board so much anymore as much as I like really write out and describe in detail that vision, and very much speak it into existence. Like my husband, he knows what we're working towards together. It's something that my team is aware of and things like that. So, but I think this tool will help you guys kind of pull it out. And it's an exercise you can do with your teams as well.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much for jumping on with us. I think it's just like really refreshing to hear from somebody who, I think your focus in this business has always been sort of like where I want mine to be. And I think that, it's just something to really shoot for. So, thank you so much. Everybody's saying that was incredible. Thank you so much. Guys, I'm going to hit the recording up on YouTube shortly after this, but thank you so much, Liz, for your time.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
All right.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.